So Jillian, what drew you to criminal law?
Protecting the rights of other people.
Obviously it wasn't the money. I mean, there's so much more money in other areas of the law. And you have to deal with a lot more sort of the bottom of society sort of thing. Does that bother you at all? Or how do you approach your...
I came from Seattle, Washington, from the Public Defender Association. And so we provided defense, and it was a team orientation. So there was always a lawyer, a social worker, and an investigator. And from that experience dealing with the people who couldn't afford anything as far as a defense, with the team-oriented status, it was so eye-opening to me. And the public defender firm that I was with, we had every lawyer there was an Ivy League lawyer. Cornell, Harvard, Yale, all of them, Brown, all of those universities attracted that kind of lawyer who, like you just said, didn't go into it for money, obviously. And so just seeing that type of lawyer, I wasn't a lawyer back then, seeing that type of lawyer work that hard for people who needed it, that's what drew me to criminal law. And that's why I came here and I'm doing what I'm doing.
I suppose that's the really rewarding aspect of it. I mean, if you were in corporate law or real estate, you'd just be like shuffling papers and moving money back and forth, but not really dealing with the human drama of life, everyday life. Is that what keeps you compelled to continue your job?
Yes. For the young man who hooked up with a girl on Tinder and thought he was having consensual sex with her, and then finds out after the fact that she's apparently changed her mind and reported him to the police, and the police come and knock on his door and arrest him, and he's never ever even gotten a speeding ticket before, and then he gets hauled into the justice system. That's why I do this job, because those people need help, and they need qualified, experienced lawyers that know what they're doing, not the people that you just described that do the corporate work but want the human drama, so they decide to dabble. That's why I do what I do.
Is it somewhat frustrating that you're basically up against the state and its vast resources? I mean, the Crown's got unlimited money. Police, despite calls for defunding, seem to have the same. And it's you and your client basically against the world. I mean, how do you approach that?
It is very hard. And so when I am sitting with a client, especially when we get the disclosure, because that's one of the most horrible meetings that I'm going to have with my client, because the state is there now in front of them in black and white. And it is. And so I explained to the client before we have our meeting, this is going to be uncomfortable for you, and this is going to feel very scary for you, because we've talked about everything that's happened to that point, but literally the state, the whole weight of everything that you've been dealing with, you're now going to see in black and white, and it is the state. And I remind them when we do our trial preparation, we usually have many meetings before we go in, I remind them that the second we walk into the courtroom door, the courthouse doors, and once you walk into security, I am the only person that is there for you. Everyone else in this building is against you, and it is me and you against everybody.
Now, a lot of people, their perception of law, especially criminal law, is what they see on TV, especially U.S. TV, where it's glamorous, things are done in seconds. Lawyers interview clients for 30 seconds and come up with a brilliant defense. And can you explain just how much work has to go into a particular case?
It is hours and hours. So I think I'm unlike many other lawyers. I do actually track my time. And so I look and I want to be able to see how much a drug trafficking file, how much time that takes to prepare versus a sex assault, so that I can be more efficient for my clients in the end. And it is countless hours so far. And when it comes to preparing that argument, that 5-minute argument that you talked about, so the second I get the disclosure, I'm working on my argument. But then when we get there, this is what clients don't understand, I don't think, is I approach it in a team-based way. And so I have my client come in and we do many, many trial preparation meetings, especially if I expect the client's going to be giving evidence. And so something that the clients don't really understand when they do see that 5 minute on TV is how much work is required from them as well.
I guess it's pretty eye-opening for them that they think that, yeah, I'm going to meet my lawyer once and then that's it. You really develop a relationship with your clients.
And Kevin, that is a sad thing. I have done a few appeals and I've literally, the client said, I met my lawyer for the first time on the doorstep of court and we went in and we ran a trial. And that does happen, unfortunately. And it is, so when a client comes to me, it is, I think, eye-opening that how much time it takes from them, how much time I put into it, and all of the work that I request of them. It's not easy.
Now, you mentioned, you get drug clients or clients accused of sexual assault. There are dozens and dozens of different criminal charges. Does the fact that variety exists within the criminal law make it a lot more interesting and rewarding as opposed to a corporate guy who's doing the same thing basically every day?
Yes, it does make it rewarding and it does make it interesting. And I do find that some lawyers are even kind of, we've chosen the niche of criminal law, of course, but some lawyers even choose even deeper niches. Like some just do impaired driving, for example, for as long as that's going to last. So, yeah.
Yeah. Can you look back on any particular case that jumps out in terms of it was just so rewarding or so amazing to be involved in?
Yes, two. One was a sexual assault file where a young man met a girl first on Tinder, then on Bumble, learned what those apps are now, and he did have what he thought was consensual sex with her. And he came to me. He was literally a person who'd never had a speeding ticket before. He was a young man, and he was terrified. He felt horrified that he could even be accused of such a thing, first of all, and then to learn he's facing a 3-year jail sentence if he's convicted. And I listened to his story, we analyzed the evidence, we put together a legal argument, we went into court, we argued, we made specific strategic steps. We took specific strategic steps to get the best possible result, which was in the end a not guilty finding. And it was really interesting. We put together a book of authorities, we came and we argued the law and we applied it to the facts, and the Crown literally sat at the table next to me and interrupted my argument and said, Judge, I don't understand, I take issue with the fact that my friend is taking law and arguing it. And the judge was literally perplexed. But at the end of the day, we were successful, and that was really rewarding. And this client has gone back to his life, and he's since learned a little bit more about what the law of consent is. But he did, what happened that night was a consensual interaction, and thankfully the judge did find that that's what it was.
You mentioned this, especially the young man with the Tinder account. The law can be so complicated and so nuanced. That like people end up committing criminal offenses, or at least get accused of committing criminal offenses, doing things that they think are completely all right. I mean, is it frustrating and sometimes disheartening to have clients come in and say, hey, look, I don't know why they even charged me. I mean, I didn't do anything wrong, and yet there's going to be a trial because there's at least a compelling argument on the other side. I mean, how do you deal with someone like that?
It's really hard. I have a trial coming up in October where I'm very worried about my client because he doesn't think he did anything wrong, and the Crown has a compelling case. It is very difficult. So unfortunately, part of the job of being a criminal defense lawyer is not just getting to analyze and then argue the law. You do have to manage your client's expectations and explain the law to them, because as you just said, it is nuanced and not everyone knows how the law actually works. And so it's hard and it's a heavy burden to carry, but it's an important one to carry.
Criminal defense lawyers are basically behind a 8 ball to begin with. Most cases are losers, and sometimes you're able to pull one out of the hat. But like, how do you deal with the fact that most of the time you don't really have a case to mount? I mean, Is that frustrating to have to, you see the Crown's office always saying, hey, we want another one.
Yes. And of course, I do care about my client, and I want my client. My client came to me needing help, and of course, I want to help them and get them to the very best that we can, which is hopefully not some sort of penalty, criminal penalty. So it is very, very hard. Our system is not working properly in a situation where I have clients and they're coming, like the police should not be charging people unless there are reasonable and probable grounds, and it shouldn't get to the criminal court stage if there isn't a reasonable likelihood in conviction and a public interest to prosecute. If I was winning in every single case, then our system's not working properly.
Often there's so much at stake. For example, the immigrant who could have, possibly been deported because of basically doing what he thought he was instructed to do by the city. Are there instances where you say, oh, it's just so hard to have to risk, put up with this risk, that this person's they're putting their lives in my hand? I mean, how do you approach that? It's
hard. When I was in Seattle at the public defender firm, I was encouraged to go to law school by all those Yale and Cornell grads, and I just never ever wanted to do that, because that's death penalty. We dealt with death penalty cases. There is no chance I would have ever, especially back then, thought that I would have been qualified to do that. I still struggle with the burden that I carry, but fortunately I'm surrounded by a great team of lawyers, and we can talk about it and we can bounce ideas off of each other. And at the end of the day, there aren't that many of us, and these people need help, and I have to do it.
I guess that's the ultimate reward, is that you're dealing with people who are really at the bottom of society, the most marginalized individuals, people who have drug problems, or they've had extremely harsh upbringings, horrible, tragic lives, and you're able to give them a glimmer of hope. Is that really what it's about? Well,
that's true, but I also have clients who are professionals. I do have professional clients who have made a mistake and have gotten themselves in a situation that need help. But yes, so even if you are one of those marginalized people that are homeless, and I certainly have those clients, I also have professional clients who are, architects or in professional settings. Both of those people are facing the most terrifying time of their life, and they need help. And so I'm going to do the best I can for them.